Well, hello, and welcome to another Space Foundation Space Commerce Entrepreneurial Interview. I'm Shelli Brunswick, Chief Operating Officer. Today, I have the privilege to talk with Captain Franz Almeida, airline pilot, turned founder, turned investor, turned limited partner, turned venture capitalist at SP8CEVC. Welcome, Captain Franz. We're so glad you could join us today.
Thanks, Shelly. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Well, I love the T-shirt. So we always love swag. So that's a fun look for us. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you become an angel investor, and why did you focus on space?
Sure. Well, I guess it all started back when, way back when, probably I was like 16 or 17 years old. I was working a summer job at a local airport, and that got me kind of fascinated with planes, aircrafts. I was always traveling when I was a kid too, with my father and around the world. I grew up overseas because my dad, he was in petroleum, but because of that, I was in a lot of a lot of aircrafts and planes and helicopters and whatnot, and that's where the fascination came from. So one thing led to another. Went to flight school, and now about 14 aircrafts later and a couple of thousand hours in the air, with 3 jet type ratings. Here I am, and that's where it all started.
Amazing. That's a really exciting journey. Now, share a little bit more about Space VC. How did that get started?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I really started my career as an airline pilot, and I really got the capital to start investing because I had some property at the time, which I, got rid of, and I started investing into founders, really early checks into founders. Been doing that for about 9 years now, and a couple of years into that, I decided to go back to school. While I was there, I founded another company of my own called Huey. So I did the founder thing for about 3 years. That was back in 2016, all the way through 2018, late 2018. After that founder experience, I switched my own investing strategy a little bit and decided to look at emerging managers of the VC asset class, much like myself now. And because of my connections out in San Francisco, I decided to back up another manager out there, a VC fund. So I'm also an LP at a fund out there in San Francisco. And then Space VC came about in a very, I wouldn't say funny manner, but I was part of a larger team working on a separate problem for the GBFB, which is the Greater Boston Food Bank. This is early 2019 to late 2019. And that's really where I met my partner, Junaid, who was the other general partner now of the firm. We met for coffee here in the city, in New York City. And we really did discuss about the deal flow, because he has a lot of deal flow on the biotech and the longevity side. And because of my background, I get a lot of deal flow in aerospace and space. And we kind of met and realized there's a huge gap in the VC and the PE space, where there's firms out there that either invest into deep tech or space, but then they overlook longevity on the biotech side. On the other side of that coin, there's firms out there that invest into biotech, but then they ignore space. And we believe there's a huge connection there, which is also part of our thesis. And that's really how Space VC was formed back in 2019.
That's amazing. Now, are there certain types of companies you like to invest in or prefer to invest in?
Yeah, so I would say, there's really 2 broad buckets of companies when it comes to space, because I just focus on the space side of things. Junaid focuses on the longevity side. But on my end, I really like to focus on the bucket which has, it's space assets for on-Earth use cases. That's really my primary focus. And then the other sub asset over there, or my sub view over there, would be space for space. And so let me touch on a little bit about what that means. Really, where we are right now in space, as you know, Shelly, there's been about, in the last 9 years or so, there's been about 3,000 plus rounds in space. Over $180 billion has been invested, and approximately 1,500 unique companies. And if we're really looking at it from an investor perspective and a return, perspective, to generate alpha for our investors into our fund, then I'm really interested in the application side of things in space. There's approximately about 900 companies in that sector. About 147 billion has been invested over the last 9 years, over 2,200 rounds. And then the other aspect of that is the infrastructure that goes in, that is going into space. We're not really interested in the launch side of things because that's kind of crowded at the moment. But again, over a 9-year period, there's been about 400 plus companies in the infrastructure space. We're over 33 billion invested across 1,000 rounds. So that's really our area of focus.
Amazing. Now, when you started this company concept, did you know that that this was going to be exponential growth in the space sector, or did you already target that? How did you really get started with targeting on the space side of things?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I've been, tracking space for a long time. I've always had an interest in space. I grew up watching. I'm an '80s kid, so I grew up watching like Star Trek and Star Wars and things of that nature. And even 10 years ago, I was more actively flying at the time. If you told me that I would be one day investing into space companies, I wouldn't never believe. So simply because back then it was more a domain of NASA and things of that nature, right? People spoke about space, and you immediately think, NASA, that's their domain, that's the government's domain, or that's the military's domain. That's it. But a strange shift started to happen over 5 years ago, where more and more of these founders were talking about space. Again, this was pre SpaceX's reusable rocket launch and all of that. So that kind of got me interested. I've always been very interested in patterns and trends. So I really started to pay attention to what was happening, what kind of companies were coming about. Again, because of SpaceX, Blue Origin, a lot of people don't really know that these companies have been around for like 2 decades or so. They're not really new. But there was a lot of companies that came about in space in the early 2000s and mid 2000s as well, but they all failed just because of the infrastructure that we had, could not really support these companies at all. But now the reason why this is happening now is really because of the dropping launch costs of payloads into space, as you know, which has led to really literally an explosion of companies across the board. So we started tracking this, I want to say, I should say I started tracking this in about 2015, 2016. I did not know that I was going to start a fund purely based on space at the time. I was interested in starting a venture capital fund. Obviously, aerospace was top of my list because that's what I know. And then obviously it was a matter of shopping around with the right partner. And I was lucky enough to join into Junaid. So the rest is history, as they say. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, you've talked about your partner a little bit, but were there other mentors and individuals that helped you on your journey and helped you find your way into being a VC investor?
Yeah, I mean, not so much on the investing side of things. I kind of learned as I went along. I'm still learning every day. It's a continuous process. But in terms of the company, Space VC itself, we were lucky enough to partner up with, and this is all on our website. For those of you who are interested, you can go check out spacevc.com. Over there, we list all our partners. We have about 9 official partners on there on our site, and we also have a whole bunch of advisors. And all these advisors from the space side and also from the longevity side have spent years in space, and they've spent their entire careers in space. And when I met up and told them what we're doing, as well as Junaid, they're really fascinated with what we were doing in both space and the human longevity component. It just clicked, and they have been super instrumental in getting us where this company is today. So I started to say that we would not be here without our advisors and folks. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, in both your personal journey as well as starting Space VC, what have been some of your biggest challenges?
Yeah, again, good question. I would say, from a founder perspective, and I was first starting out, I still consider myself to be a founder, really, disguised as a VC. But really, the main challenge for me personally was fundraising. Again, because being a founder, you kind of have to wear a lot of these hats. There's no real school that teaches you all this stuff. You kind of like learn as you go. And that learning comes from a lot of meetings that take place where at the end of the meeting, they're like, hey, we're doing a great job, but no, thank you. And it's always a no. but you listen to about 15 or 20,000 or 30,000 no's to get to that first yes. And once you do, and then it's a different ball game. And then things kind of like, it's downhill from there. It's just a picture of hill where you're like a single person kind of have a huge ball on your back, which you're pushing up that hill, and all the, every inch of that hill, climb upward is someone saying no to you, but you're still, moving forward. And then once that final yes happens, you kind of like roll that ball over the hill, and then it's all downhill from there. So that's my analogy for that. Yeah.
That's a fantastic analogy. And I think that's for not just for investors, but entrepreneurs and for all of us in life. We're all rolling that ball uphill until we get that first yes. Well, we're going to take a short break for some great insight on what's happening at Space Foundation.
Space Foundation is a nonprofit advocate organization offering gateways to information, education, and collaboration for space exploration and space-inspired industries that drive the global space ecosystem. Space Foundation, advocating for innovation, bettering life on Earth.
Welcome back to our entrepreneurial interview with Captain Franz Almeida, venture capitalist. Well, we just talked about what were some of your biggest challenges. What are some of your biggest successes, both personally as well as in an investor?
Yeah, I would say on the personal front, flying a whole bunch of aircrafts. That's what I love to do. I still fly. As I mentioned, I have like 3 jet type ratings. I'm always looking to meet other founders and folks now in the aviation industry who are actively doing something in aerospace. So yeah, I mean, I want to say operating close to 14 different kind of aircrafts around the planet and really connecting people from point A to point B that was pretty. That's what did it for me for all those years. I would see someone on the aircraft and kind of then as I was leaving the aircraft or leaving the airport, I would see them united with their loved ones, and that was a great feeling that that I had to kind of like have a small little part in that whole process. So I guess that's for me. It was if you're counting success, the other part would be is just a journey of learning. Switched careers now from flying to investing, which is quite a jump, but this job now kind of gives me the opportunity to meet a lot of founders, learn what they're doing, learn about what they're doing, and I'm always learning from them. Really, it's not only about investing into founders; it's also about learning what they're building, what problems they're solving. So that's really one of the things that really excites me, and I think talking about successes, that's a success in and of itself. So yeah, those would be 2 biggest things.
Absolutely. Well, what are some of your lessons learned, both personally as well as a venture capitalist investor? What have you learned, and what do you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, great question. I mean, well, I would say on the personal front, life is short. You got to live it to the fullest. If you don't take that shot if you don't take that shot, you're never going to hit the goal. It's zero. You're going to hit 0% if you never take the shot. So I would say just whatever it is, if you have an idea, whatever it is that you want to do, take the shot, see what happens. You never know, right? Because if you don't, it'll never happen for you. That's on the personal front. On the investing side of things, I want to say, from a raising standpoint, the raise is never over until there is really money in the bank. Commitments fall through every day. So it's a continuous process of getting in touch with an investor, kind of building up a relationship even prior to asking for a check from a founder perspective, and then also from an investor perspective, who investors like me, who are VCs, we have to have relationships with LPs who invest into our funds. And again, if you think about it, it's more like a sales job where I'm continuously selling, and we're raising too, by the way, we're still raising. It's a continuous sales job where you're talking to an investor who invests into funds and really convincing them as to why they should entrust their capital with you, so you can take that $1 and turn it into 10. And then on the other hand, we're speaking to a whole bunch of founders to tell them hey, besides the check from us, this is what we can also do for you to get your company from point A to B into exit. So it's a continuous sales process, I want to say, on both fronts.
I think that's amazing. Now, you did talk about the investment piece of it, so I want to kind of turn this a little bit so we can help some entrepreneurs that are listening. What makes some of these companies more financially feasible than others, and what do you kind of look for to make that financial investment in those companies?
It's all about the team, I would say. It's all about the team. Everything hinges around the team because ideas are great, but it's how the team executes on that idea to take it from point A to point B to exit. And the other thing that I would point out is after speaking to a whole bunch of founders and entrepreneurs, patterns start to emerge of folks that are probably going to make it because at the end of the day, we never know who's going to do what. But after you speak to that many amount of people and founders, you kind of like get a quote unquote sixth sense of these things of how they're going to move forward. For example, if founder is not really focused on what they're doing and kind of all over the place, that's never a good sign, and it just tells investor that they're probably not going to be able to focus on a clear roadmap from taking this company from a seed stage all the way to an exit. But on the other hand, if you have a founder who is super focused on what it is that they're doing and clearly articulate to you that, hey, this is my problem, this is how I'm going to solve it, this is my roadmap from point A to point B, and then onwards. This is how I plan to generate revenue. This is what you guys are, this is how I plan to exit the company. And again, it'll probably never happen the way they describe it, but at least them articulating that clear thought process tells me, at least in my case, I can't speak for other investors, but in my case, that these people have clearly thought out this process and are not just throwing darts in the dark. So.
Excellent. So having the right team, having that clear focus, and being able to tell the story are things that you look for. I wanted to ask you about, both for you as a VC as well as an entrepreneur, what is the importance of advocacy and awareness?
Yeah, I feel like it's really important across the board. Regardless of the vertical you're in, I think having a voice and being able to speak on multiple platforms and kind of being omnipresent about what you're doing and advocating what it is that you're doing to the world, kind of showcases your area of expertise in the field of what it is that you're doing. And the more you can get your voice heard out there, the more attention you're going to attract to other people. For example, I believe we met on Clubhouse, and that's only because we have regular chats on space and longevity on Clubhouse every other week. And this is just not to showcase what we know, really to learn more about what the other folks know, and kind of connect with other people such as yourself who are within the same kind of quote unquote space, right? And so it's more like advocating for space, and that goes for longevity, it goes for whatever it is that any founder is doing. So it is super important for sure.
Excellent. Well, as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, from my perspective, as I mentioned before, if you're a founder watching this, specifically a founder in space, please get in touch. My email is franz@spacevc.com, or you can just simply go to spacevc.com, hit the contact section, fill out that form, get in touch with me that way. I'm always interested in meeting other founders in aerospace and aviation too, who are who have something to do with aircrafts and flight, because I get a lot of inquiries to join advisory boards and things of that nature. So I'm always on the hunt for dynamic teams to be a part of that, because I do have some free bandwidth coming up very soon. And then on the other side, if you're an investor, we have a whole bunch of deals in space, a whole bunch of deals in longevity that we are running through the fund, and also through single asset SPVs. Happy to have you guys on board to co-invest alongside with us. I can say this because we're a 506C fund. Again, this is for the SEC, so I have to put that in there. And that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Captain Franz, for joining us today. We'll hope you'll come back in a few months and give us an update, especially since you have a little bandwidth in your schedule.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Shelli. And thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. And I look forward to joining you on the next Clubhouse as well, because it's important to bring advocacy and awareness about the growing global space industry.
Definitely. And then finally, I would also add that, doing the same for women in the sector is really something that I'm trying to support, because I'm not seeing a whole lot of female-led founders who are starting companies in space. So that has to change, I feel.
Absolutely. We have to do that awareness so that all diversity and inclusion can participate in the growing space ecosystem. Well, again, thank you. And we're looking forward to connecting with you in a few months and learning where you are and what advisory boards you're serving on.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Great day.
Well, if you're interested in learning more about our Space Commerce program or watching other entrepreneurial webinars, go to spacefoundation.org and check out our Space Commerce series. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again. There's a place for everyone in the new global space ecosystem.